All right, you're just waking up with us this morning. Parts of our region under a tsunami advisory.
Beneath the restless waters of the Pacific, somewhere far beyond the sight of fishing boats and rocky tide pools, danger gathers in silence. Washington's tranquil coastline, windswept, wild, and green, has always stood at the continent's ragged edge, where mist shrouds rainforests and driftwood marks the line between civilization and oblivion. Here, generations have measured time by tides, fishing seasons, and the secretive pulse of the sea. People build their lives in the shadow of quiet cliffs and salt-scoured evergreens, certain that, while storms may batter the shore, the land itself will endure. But what if endurance is only an illusion? Recently, the United States Geological Survey, USGS, has brought new urgency to the Pacific Northwest's quiet anxiety. New data, newly crafted maps, and in-depth workshops planned for 2025 have begun to puncture the myth of perpetual safety along Washington's coast. In some places, danger is not creeping, but poised, measured in seconds, mapped along the jagged seams of tectonic plates, locked in ancient, powerful tension beneath the waves. Geologists and safety officials have warned for years of a looming mega tsunami, a wall of water strong enough to erase entire coastal communities in a matter of moments. If you could peer through the dense canopy and persistent fog past the last sentinels of cedar and spruce, would you perceive what's approaching? Or is the greater threat that until now, the true dangers have been charted in whispers, not in ink? What secrets lie hidden, waiting to break, literally, along the deepest seams of the Pacific Northwest? The Cascadia threat, history, written in stone and salt, stretching from Northern California to the far coast of British Columbia. The Cascadia subduction zone is not a single crack, but an 800-mile tectonic frontier, lying roughly 70 miles offshore from Washington's peaceful beaches. Here, the relentless Juan de Fuca plate grinds beneath the North American plate, sticking and slipping, storing centuries of tension in a titanic silence. It is the boundary where two immense forces wrestle for dominance, each millimeter of movement steadily storing energy for the next upheaval. For decades, this threat was more legend than fact, discussed in coastal classrooms and memorialized in native oral histories. The earth can rise, the sea can attack. Seismologists have long known what the evidence reveals. The last time Cascadia ruptured on a massive scale, in the year 1700, the earthquake's power propagated across the Pacific. Japanese records describe an orphan tsunami, a mysterious rise of water with no local quake, wiping out villages by the morning light. What began with an invisible shift beneath what is now Washington's coast ended in destruction felt thousands of miles away. Since that time, generations have built cities and memories along this deceptively calm edge. Beneath the calm exterior, clues accumulate: drowned forests, layers of sand deep within coastal marshes, and bands of marine mud marking abrupt, violent changes. Every discovery adds to a story told in geological shorthand, long stretches of quiet, punctuated by catastrophic release. Every new study reinforces the warning. Another Cascadia megaquake is a question of when, not if. Models now show up to 2 meters of coastal uplift or subsidence in an instant, enough to generate a tsunami able to sweep inland with devastating speed. Yet until the latest data and mapping, no one could say with precision which ground was riskiest, which community would have time, and which would not. Recent USGS research has brought this uncertainty into sharper focus. If you trace your finger along Washington's shore, is your home part of the old myth, or marked in fresh red on the new risk maps? Mapping the invisible, the new risk zones unveiled. For most, maps are guides for travel and curiosity. But in January 2025, the USGS plans to present a very different vision of the coast. Gone are soft pastels of recreation and memory. Instead, bold overlays, gradated threat zones, and lines that mark not just where a tsunami may strike, but how quickly its force may arrive. This new approach to tsunami risk mapping reflects years of multidisciplinary research. Scientists combined seismic monitoring, analysis of prehistoric deposits, interviews with local residents, and sophisticated computer modeling to capture the complexity of the region's hazard. They consulted not only with emergency planners, but with local voices. For the first time, tsunami evacuation maps are shaped not only by hazard data, but by community knowledge and input. One set identifies potential vertical evacuation sites, elevated structures, or natural high ground selected by local communities. These lifelines stand out across dense neighborhoods, where climbing just a few meters can mean the difference between survival and disaster. A second series of maps focuses on time, using new simulations and information from recently launched fourth-generation detection buoys, built in Seattle and deployed in the Pacific. The USGS can now estimate how many minutes different communities would have in the event of a large Cascadia earthquake. In many areas, the window is astonishingly short, 10 to 15 minutes at best. These maps, with new color gradations and threat levels, make the warning urgent and personal. From the sandy reaches near ocean shores to the remote harbors at Nia Bay, risk is no longer abstract, it's measured in countdowns. But the maps are not only warnings, they're tools for action. In places where previous evacuation plans directed people to drive inland or up uncertain roads, new risk zones highlight the necessity for more accessible, nearby, and vertical options. In some towns, a gymnasium on piers or a sturdy community shelter could be the only viable refuge for those who cannot outrun a tsunami wave. As the maps are unveiled, local leaders trace their own vulnerabilities, weighing new responsibilities for preparedness. Is this the moment when risk finally becomes real, not a statistic, but a lived communal concern? Buoys, warnings, and the 10-minute race. Early detection is central to tsunami safety. For years, regional and global warning systems relied on ocean-spanning networks capable of alerting for distant events that allow hours for evacuation. But in Cascadia's case, the epicenter is staggeringly close. The time between earthquake and wave arrival often leaves only a razor-thin margin for life-saving action. Enter the latest Seattle-engineered advancement, the fourth-generation tsunami detection buoy. Unlike their predecessors, these modern buoys combine rapid data processing with direct communications to emergency management networks. They are capable of providing a precious 10 to 15 minutes of additional warning after a Cascadia earthquake, time that makes all the difference. For coastal residents, this extra warning is not an abstract improvement. A few more minutes can mean the difference between chaos and a chance at escape. More time for a teacher to lead children to a vertical evacuation shelter. More time for a family to reach higher ground. This new system is a leap forward for communities once left with barely any warning at all. Yet the numbers also cast a sobering shadow. Even with earlier alerts, in some low-lying neighborhoods, the race between rising water and escaping feet is brutally close. The USGS maps demonstrate that, even in optimal circumstances, some areas have less than 10 minutes from the first shaking to the wave's arrival. Why does this matter? Because risk is not static or evenly distributed. Some previously overlooked communities are, in fact, highly exposed, whether to the initial wave, to secondary flow coming through tidal channels, or to backwash surges against natural barriers. This is not merely a single event, but a sustained, multi-stage threat, one that will strain even the best preparation. Here, beneath the deep Pacific, the new buoys keep silent watch, translating every tremor and shift into data, their signals racing the clock to warn those on shore. Could a few precious minutes redraw the fate of an entire coastline? Communities on the edge, life in the shadow of a mega tsunami. The risk is not uniform. Washington's coastline alternates between broad sandy peninsulas, rocky bluffs, and forest-clad headlands. Each setting shapes how communities experience and respond to tsunami risk. In towns like Long Beach and Ocean Shores, people have settled on low-lying sand spits, attractive and fertile, but exceedingly vulnerable. Here, evacuation requires rapid movement along busy roads that can quickly become congested, whether from summer tourism or storm debris. The new USGS maps clearly designate these areas among the most at risk. By contrast, some communities are blessed with natural elevation, a headland overlooking the sea, a plateau rising behind the village. In these places, the solution may be as simple as a well-marked trail to higher ground. Others are developing plans for vertical evacuation structures, sometimes doubling as community centers. Evacuation maps, once broad and general, are now increasingly precise. They mark specific buildings, stairwells, and even streets, making preparation locally relevant and actionable. New challenges arise. How do you assist those who cannot move quickly? Elders, people with disabilities, press communities to embed preparedness in daily life. This is a significant change. In 1700, people along these shores had no warning. Today, every study and plan is an attempt to shift the odds. Knowledge, paired with action, is the only true defense. But a difficult question persists. Will learning about risk inspire urgency or lead to fatalism? Will people prepare or merely hope they are lucky? Unveiling the past, ghost forests, ancestral stories, and scientific certainty. Even with cutting-edge technology, the foundation for tsunami awareness is built on the land itself. Across the Washington coast, evidence remains visible. Stands of dead trees killed by saltwater, buried valleys layered with tsunami sand, and ancient stumps exposed at low tide. These are markers of previous Cascadia events, reminders that the land and sea have reshaped each other and will again. Long before European settlement, indigenous communities knew these dangers. Their stories describe earth-shaking nights, flooded shorelines, and survival strategies passed from generation to generation. Place names and oral histories linger, a solemn testament to memory and caution. Modern research amplifies these traditional accounts. Scientists excavate drowned forests, date tsunami deposits, and use high-tech tools to reconstruct the cadence of past disasters. Regular intervals, every 200 to 500 years, stand out in the records, suggesting that the return of a major Cascadia event is part of a natural cycle. This matters because the new USGS risk maps are grounded not in speculation, but in the interplay of ancient evidence and current science. What the landscape reveals, new technology confirms. Understanding this continuity helps communities to see that the past is not a warning only for others, but a blueprint for preparedness now. When the past and present converge in the evidence, the message is clear. Readiness is a duty bridging generations. Science, responsibility, and the fragile art of preparedness. Technological progress brings sharper warnings and more powerful tools. Still, the greatest challenge is to turn risk awareness into meaningful safety. The USGS and its partners are pressing forward, not only with maps and buoys, but also public education, updated evacuation plans, and community drills. The January 2025 workshop in Seattle is just one example of this broad effort. Are resources best spent on sirens, text alerts, or evacuation infrastructure? How does a small town balance the costs of readiness against other pressing needs? These debates are not abstract. New evacuation maps increase pressure on both leaders and residents, forcing hard choices about zoning. Preparedness efforts must reach everyone, especially those for whom moving out of the hazard zone is not feasible. The challenge is both technical and social, building not just defenses, but a community-wide culture of vigilance and adaptability. A persistent concern is complacency. The absence of disaster over several generations can breed overconfidence, can lull people into believing disaster is always elsewhere or unlikely. The new USGS maps, with their stark clarity, are meant to challenge that complacency and sharpen the sense of lived vulnerability. At the heart of these efforts lies a bigger question. Can awareness overcome inertia? The unseen strain, infrastructure, ecology, and unfolding consequences. Tsunamis affect more than people. The entire coastal infrastructure, water systems, power line, ports, and roads is at risk from powerful surges. The new risk zones highlight this, indicating the need for redundancy in vital services and robust planning for swift recovery. When tsunami waves recede, the impact is far from over. Isolating regions, water supplies can be compromised, electricity cut off, and transportation routes buried in debris. Emergency response becomes complicated in remote areas, and the aftermath can be marred by disease risks, contamination, and resource shortages. Ecological recovery, too, is daunting. Tsunami surges can inundate wetlands, disturb estuaries, and disrupt spawning grounds for fish and birds. Restoring these natural systems is a long-term challenge, often extending years beyond the flood itself. Saltwater intrusion may transform marshes into ghost forests, and habitats crucial for coastal resilience can be lost or altered. Contingency planning in 2025 is, therefore, comprehensive, from delivering backup power to securing water stocks, from mapping helicopter landing spots to developing protocols for marsh and estuary restoration. The updated risk maps drive home how interconnected these challenges become after a major event, and how preparation must extend far beyond immediate escape routes. Yet, these revelations are invitations as well. By mapping vulnerabilities clearly, planners and citizens are prompted to innovate, creating more flexible power grids, placing emergency supplies at new evacuation towers, and caring for ecological restoration as part of overall resilience. Tsunamis are fast and brute in their arrival, but their recovery is slow. The only wave we can ride is the one made by thoughtful preparation and enduring collaboration. The Coastline awakens from denial to vigilance. For years, denial has marked everyday life along Washington's coast. The scenery invites enjoyment. The history of catastrophe seems remote or buried in the past. Yet the unveiling of new tsunami risk zones and evacuation maps is forcing a change, a shift from complacency to vigilance. In community meetings, from Forks to Ilwaco, at the same time, this new awareness brings a certain poetry and purpose. The reality of risk is not meant to provoke fear for its own sake, but to inspire a shared commitment to endurance. It is becoming clear, to live along the Pacific is to accept both beauty and threat, and to meet them with humility, planning, and togetherness. Maybe we cannot make peace with the specter of a mega tsunami, but we can respond collectively with vigilance, readiness, and an understanding that real safety is built on recognition of risk. What the silence hides, new questions, new beginnings. So, as the Washington coast prepares for its next chapter, what lies ahead? There is no final guarantee or simple answer. What emerges is a coast increasingly defined not only by its scenery, but by a living, evolving conversation about risk and resilience. For the USGS, the rollout of new tsunami risk maps is a milestone in a much longer journey. Tectonic tension will continue to build beneath the Pacific, and human communities will adapt, innovate, and remember. The new generation of buoys and warning systems rides the same swells as the fishing boats, providing quiet reassurance in an uncertain world. Stories will be told, tools improved, new lessons learned. As science and experience build upon each other, the region's collective preparedness will deepen, layer by layer, generation by generation. Ultimately, the most important question is not whether a tsunami will come, but whether we will be ready, whether awareness can be transformed into action, and whether vigilance will outlast denial. So as dawn breaks over Washington's rugged shores and gulls wheel above new evacuation towers, remember, beneath the gentle surf, unseen forces shape tomorrow. The ocean's memory runs deep, and its next message may not come gently to shore. If you found this journey into Washington's hidden risks insightful, we invite you to reflect. How would you prepare for the 10-minute warning? What does the unveiling of risk maps mean for you, your family, your community? Share your thoughts, stay curious, and always remember, the key to coastal living is not just in enjoying the beauty, but in honoring the science, the stories, and the responsibility that comes with it. Thank you for listening. Beneath the sunlit shallows, the Pacific still remembers, and every generation must learn anew. Preparedness is a legacy, and the future is always unwritten.